First of all, I want to obviously thank you for the opportunity. I want to thank all the speakers and specifically for your time today. As Dino already said, my name is Americo Mazzotta and I work for Appian, which is an hyper automation platform that supports the rapid delivery of business applications. And I am specifically involved with Appian for heading the team of customer success in the DACH, Benelux, and Nordics territories. And as part of my day-to-day job, I actually support organizations and specifically senior managers within their transformation journey and adoption of our platform. And as you can imagine, I'm actually lucky enough to have a deeper insight in some of the challenges, but also collecting some of the metrics and specifically some of the learnings that companies at the moment are having and how they are actually adapting to delivering business and technology transformation during the current circumstances, specifically during the COVID times. And this is what I would like to present to you today. So we are actually, from an Appian standpoint and also from our partner ecosystem, we are actually quite lucky, specifically because the pandemic has really brought kind of like a big shift in the way we work, specifically in the working dynamics, and has affected the way organizations are actually delivering projects. But obviously, it's needless to say that with the increase in people working remotely, organizations also working with software vendors or technology providers that are working remotely, working from home, obviously the demands, the requirements, the processes need to be changed and need to be adapted as well. So how did Appian as a software organization manage to continue this deliver and guarantee success for its customer? Well, we have, as I said, we actually were lucky enough to already have the Appian customer success team and as well as our partner network being already distributed right across the globe and have many years of experience in delivering project with distributed client and project team. This was already a great baseline because with the possibility of having this network and specifically with the possibility of having established delivery practices and established methodologies, we were actually able to do this shift and this transition quite smoothly. But obviously, we are working with customers who, in some cases, unfortunately, don't have this type of luck or unfortunately don't have an infrastructure in place in order to support this transition and supporting this change. So how do we support our customers? How have we actually joined forces with our customers in order to overcome this type of challenges? Well, the first thing that we have done is really at looking at what a target operating model is going to look like, right? When we're talking about target operating model, obviously not in the sense of an organization target operating model, but more in the context of the specific execution of a project, of a delivery stream, or specifically of the development of a solution. And these three factors play an important role. The people that are going to be involved, obviously the technology and the process. From a people standpoint, the establishing of a governance team, the establishing of a management team that is supporting the digital transformation is extremely important, specifically because the majority of the direction, the majority of the changes need to come, obviously, from the top. But also how to structure the teams in order to be working in a way that provides consistency in the way we deliver. We at Appian privilege Agile and Scrum type of methodology, which I'm going to be talking a little bit more about over the next slides. But for those of you who already are familiar with it, this gives the possibility to quickly adapt to change, and specifically in the current circumstances under the pandemic scenario, obviously we needed to act pretty fast and adjust pretty fast. And setting up obviously the technology by having a platform team, but also deciding which technology you're going to use. Obviously, Appian is a platform that provides, like a local platform that provides hyper automation, but this type of operating model actually doesn't only apply to Appian. Effectively can apply to every type of initiative where there is software or technology being involved. And the last but not least is the establishment of processes that include agile development, distribution of effort, but most importantly nowadays, communication. Over communicating is better than not communicating at all. At the current stage, like validating with team members, validating with senior management, validating with your customer. Are we moving in the right direction? Do we need to constantly adjust? Is there something that we are taking into account that is not really reflective of what we want to achieve? Are we going to achieve success? Are we set up to achieve that success? All these things play an extreme and important role. And for some organization, right, Tino, this has been a bit of a change of paradigm, a little bit of a switch, because it's actually moving from a sort of like plan-driven, very like sequential type of plan to more of an agile, value-driven type of approach. And what actually we have noticed with our customers is that actually this is obviously a challenge, the current scenario where we are, but it's also a great opportunity. A great opportunity to utilize or to make the best out of this like lockdown and slow down and upskill. Because unfortunately, we are a bit in the middle of an economic, let's say, slowdown, and companies are struggling. But this gives obviously an opportunity for organizations to really make sure that are they actually taking time to introspect in terms of how they have been doing things in the past, and how are they delivering solutions? Are they actually delivering true value for their customers? Are there actually potentially better ways of doing this, right? And the concept of utilizing a sort of like an agile value-driven approach is actually extremely helpful in these circumstances, because delivering work in smaller, meaningful increments gives obviously the possibility to break out complicated, large projects or product requirements into more manageable tasks that can be tackled in a shorter time frame or in shorter iterations or sprint, just to use, like some of the naming convention as part of agile, in order to deliver customer value and deliver value to customer faster. What is important, obviously, in order to support this is to have really a delivery or create a delivery discipline that focuses on optimizing the collaboration between teams and sets specific guidelines for project delivery. It's really a change of paradigm, right? So this slide here, it's really showing that the plan-driven approach mainly focuses on having fixed features, right? You know what you want to achieve, but sometimes, specifically when there are challenges, and specifically challenges that come from outside, from, like, for example, the pandemic over the past 12 months, time, specifically resources, and obviously quality are impacted. They are never fixed. So with an agile value-driven approach, we tend to work in a fixed time frame. So in fixing time slots, that means like that we work in setting up delivery sprints to maximum 4 weeks, where we have a dedicated team of people, fixed number of resources that have been working under certain standards and certain quality in order to deliver feature continuously. And what we've been doing at Appian is basically focusing on coaching and guiding and also supporting our customer in moving towards this paradigm. Some of our customers were already familiar with this approach, so obviously the transition has been easier and smoother. With other circumstances, obviously, it took a little bit more time. But nonetheless, many organizations have actually realized that this is a great opportunity for them to deliver continuous value for the customers, but also for their internal resources. The way we interact really like with our customer, and just to give you a bit of an overview, right, is to adopt this agile Scrum type of approach, which actually has some major objectives, like prioritizing obviously the collaboration of teams and the interaction between teams over process and tools, but also focusing on really delivering working solutions or working software rather than building comprehensive documentation, and obviously encouraging our customers to collaborate rather than negotiating every single aspect of the software delivery. And last but not least, and probably the most important in the current circumstances, is the adaptability and the ability to respond to change over following a plan. So this methodology, the Scrum methodology, it's quite old. We've been working with this for the past 10 years, and it was created obviously to help organizations specifically to increase their speed in project development and have a greater flexibility and to focus on customer relationship. But what we've seen specifically with adoption in combination of low code is that Agile gives really to teams a proper structure of work, or a proper structure to work with. It also gives to the teams the possibility to actually adapt to any scenario, because team members are actually trained on Agile practices or on Agile best practices. And it also empowers the team members to work on their own and to work as part of a team. And it's extremely relevant when we are focusing on prioritizing specific feature or prioritizing the workload. So uh, what I'm presenting here in this slide is really the way we interact, which doesn't necessarily mean that we need to consider a plan over 6, 7, 8 months, 1 year. No, we try to really focus in shorter time frames. So we engage with our customers in an initial set of activities, which is called an inception sprint or sprint zero. And during this activity, we mainly work collaboratively with our customers to get an understanding of what they really would like to achieve, what type of solution they want to implement, what type of challenges we might have. And the result of this activity is actually the creation of what is called a product backlog. We get out of this sprint zero activity with really a prioritized list of features that the solution should contain based on what the requirements are and based on obviously what the priorities are, both from a technical and from a business standpoint. And then you go into these iterations, right? Iteratively and incrementally developing and delivering releases, which has the purpose and the objective to deliver the features that have the most value. You might be wondering, right? Okay, this is all great. This is like a standard agile approach, but how have we switched actually from working on site with our customer to working actually remote? Well, this working remotely actually has been for us not extremely difficult. Obviously, it had its challenges, but the fact that we had an established agile Scrum methodology has allowed us actually to provide the structure, has allowed us to use those like regular cadence that come from agile ceremonies that are actually supporting communication, but also are extremely important when we are building successful virtual teams. These agile ceremonies, like for example, daily stand-ups or product backlog refinements, they can really provide a natural forum or a natural, environment where you can actually ensure that there is close management and transparency, and obviously you can actually review and the progress of any blockers. And having best practices or established best practices and project discipline are even more important and effective, specifically when working in virtual teams, because actually it's almost like business as usual rather than really inventing a new way of collaboration. And important to have obviously a specific set of tools or a specific set of softwares that can allow you to increase productivity. This can be, for example, softwares that improve the collaboration between the team members, or softwares that can allow to really improve the transparency of the features that you're building. Something like, for example, Jira as a backlog management tool, or using Google Documents like shared documents or Confluence, very popular tools used broadly at project level and specifically in agile context. From an Appian perspective, but I think this is also relevant extremely for every software provider that is based on the cloud. Software providers that have like platform as a service, is that having an Appian cloud platform, which is fully accessible remotely and with full information security protection, is actually something that has helped us a lot, because the transition from like working on site to working remotely has been extremely effective, because effectively connecting to a platform which is already existing on the cloud reduces that onboarding time required for team members to starting to become effective, right? And one other thing that is quite interesting is that it's not just our team which is already spread across different geographies, as I mentioned earlier, but also client teams are often distributed across different regions. So this type of virtual team project delivery is really like levels the playing field for everything. Another thing is that Appian has obviously secure conferencing collaboration platform in place, but I believe that many organizations now have moved to this as well. We are running actually this meeting over Zoom, but like this type of tools are actually becoming extremely important, because this type of tool set, this type of conferencing and web tooling are actually becoming extremely important, specifically in supporting how we can build trust between teams in a virtual environment. But really, this has been quite of a challenge, how to really help teams to work virtually, right? As I mentioned earlier, we actually are a team of like Scrum Agile practitioners with years of experience, which obviously help. But we have been actually working a lot with coaching customers teams on how we work together, right? And specifically how we work together to deliver following an expert delivery approach. It's not been easy, specifically because we need to concentrate specifically at the early stages. When I was mentioning this inception phase, this type of like sprint zero, it's important to work together with our customers to build a team that can work remotely, but can also rapidly build trust. And working together with our customers in a team setup to start and identify business value, it's already like a great exercise to build trust. And as a result, like each sprint actually delivers our workable incremental value, which ultimately results in measurable progress. But how do you build trust? Obviously, it's a collective approach, and it's a sort of like team type of activity where you need to collectively find a way on how, like a team can actually be effective, and you need to create an environment where each team member can actually feel at home, an environment where each team member is heard and also can add value. This obviously can achieve to different ways in a different set of activities that obviously are aligned with the project activities, like for example building backlog, or activities that are also outside of the specific project activity. This obviously helps because it creates an opportunity for openness. It creates an environment where it's actually safe to share ideas, it's safe to share feedback, where people actually feel comfortable and feel heard, and obviously supports future team decisions. And ultimately creates a sense of ownership, right, and accountability for the delivery of the business value. Some of the icebreakers, right, that we do, we also, like, as part of these activities, we try really to get to know everyone. And this is important because then you can actually have a better insight on how effectively each individual team member can add value to the project. And it helps also to liberate some structures that are obviously already somehow in place, but like different resources have different way to contribute specifically in the project, but also on the goals of the project, and specifically in initial activities. So this initial phase, this sprint zero phase, becomes very, very important. And why it's very important? Because this is the phase of the project where we define really the way we work, right? We defined the why, the who, and the how of the project. Why are we building something? Who are the people involved? Who are the stakeholders? Who is actually directly or indirectly involved in the implementation activities or in the delivery activity, but also who is ultimately affected by the utilization of the solution that we are building. It's important, obviously, to incorporate user feedback right away from the early stages. So we want to make sure that obviously these users that are going to be the end users, or eventually end customers, are actually going to be involved into the development activities. And then the what and the when of the project are also important. What actually are we going to get out of this sprint zero initially? What type of deliverables are we going to create? And ultimately, which is one of the questions that comes more often, like when can we expect certain features to be delivered, right? The creation really of a sort of release plan. So this were all activities that we used to do on site, and the benefit of having a sprint zero on site with our customer was obviously to build trust, to build relationship. And in a remote environment, sprint zero working practices have been adapted, specifically in the context of this 4 area. The main focus was to establish a strong foundation, and a cross-team discipline obviously is required in order to keep a schedule and to give full attention, specifically when they're not collocated. And we have a sort of like tested and trialed sprint zero schedule that we present to our customer. It's been extremely effective, and it has helped actually to keep everyone on the same track and working at the same pace. But one of the things that became extremely important was also the video conferencing, the remote working, right? Non-verbal communication is extremely important, specifically when you are not collocated in the same room, because non-verbal communication is a key to ultimately effective understanding. And also like sharing some additional tools like online whiteboards, especially when using like design thinking, or we're trying to create sort of more custom wireframing of the ambitious solution. that has improved massively our ability to collaborate in real time. But one of the things that obviously can be tricky in a virtual setup is making sure that you confirm the understanding across the team, but also with our customer. So like gaining a deep understanding of the requirements obviously is one of the goals of Sprint Zero. But like in an on-site environment, you could actually really like interact outside of the specific sprint ceremonies or outside of the specific meetings, maybe getting like a coffee with someone and validating, hey, is this really what you meant? Is this your assumption? Shall we have a follow-up? Here, what we have implemented as a sort of best practices is that we actually have produced material which we then play back straight to our customers in order to confirm that that understanding is shared across the teams, across both parties, and ultimately really working across a common goal, right? We as a software vendor, but also like our customers, we cliently hold the joint responsibility for the success of the Sprint Zero, but also of the success of the project itself. And success obviously comes from commitment, but not only commitment on the solution or commitment on the requirements, but specifically commitment on the working practices and commitment on the sprint schedule. So this collaborative working, the way it has happened, is really utilizing this agile Scrum ceremonies or agile Scrum practices to really have a defined agenda, right? Like every week, everyone knows exactly which meetings need to be attended. This is extremely important, extremely powerful in the context of working remotely and in the context of the pandemic. The daily stand-ups, for example, every morning give a great chance to have a check-in with every team member and understanding, what they have actually done the day before, what they're going to be focusing on today, what type of blockers, challenges they have, but also having additional meetings already in place with dedicated participants and dedicated time slots helps to really improve the collaboration, right? For example, meetings to address or review some specific risks or issues, meetings to perform team backlog refinement of backlog refinements. Like having a structured approach, having a structured agenda improves a lot the collaboration. And also the video conferencing and video chatting is extremely important, right? What I mentioned earlier around the nonverbal communication, utilizing, like turning your camera on, or like showing yourself to the rest of the team helps really allows others to really see the body language, the facial expression, and really encourages also people in the meeting to be more focused on the task. And a complementing feature is obviously the instant messaging or the chatting, or eventually the utilization of other tools that can improve collaboration. But there might be the risk that with this very tight schedule and this very defined schedule, people might feel a little bit overwhelmed. So we make sure that also as part of this scheduling, what we suggest to our customer, but also what we suggest to our team members, is to make sure that you actually set up specific breaks or specific time to really effectively do the work, or time to really recover. And scheduling, for example, breaks frequently in order to make sure that the group is maintaining focus. And for each 1 or 1.5 hour meeting, try to target a 10-15 minutes break for each. And very important for each meeting, create a clear purpose. So try to be as specific as possible in order to avoid having generic titles that apply to multiple meetings. So every meeting should have the right audience, the right stakeholders, and a specific clear agenda. But also, one thing that is extremely helpful is opening different breakout sessions rather than having just one single virtual conference line, which is opened and kept open all day. This is obviously less convenient, but it's helping actually to reinforce the idea that each meeting really has a specific purpose and specific attendance and a specific agenda. So as part of Appian, right, we have a lot of tools that we use for collaboration, specifically for whiteboarding, wireframing, story mapping, backlog management. I just named here a few just to give like some suggestions, but this is just what we've seen as part of being our best practices. But everyone is obviously free to choose whatever they want, and I'm sure that other organizations or other companies have their own. there is really a lot out in the market. This is really the clear message. There is really a lot of tools already available, some of them also open source or free, that can support collaboration and specifically really play well alongside with the utilization of agile and Scrum best practices. So just as a recap, so the pandemic, as I mentioned, really has brought a big shift, right, in the working dynamics. And how is agile actually helping in this environment? Is it actually helping in this type of environment? For us, at least from an Appian perspective, the answer is surprisingly yes, it is. Because as I mentioned earlier, agiles really give the possibility to have a structured way of working. It actually helps with adapting to change, and it helps to adapt to any scenarios, because specifically because agile practitioners and people who are familiar with agile are actually trained to adapt to this type of changes, and it empowers team members to work independently but also to work together as a team, and ultimately is focusing on prioritizing the workload. So one of the things that we suggest to our customers, and one of the things that we've been highly focused over the past 12 months, is to obviously improving our delivery disciplines, but also improving tools, communication and collaboration, and the way we optimize the delivering of projects. So really our suggestion is to make the best out of this lockdown scenario, right? And slow down and upskill. It's a great opportunity. I know it's a challenge, but also it's also a great opportunity to assess the way people and the specific organization have been working in the past. And the last message is very, very important, is try to create empathy and trust. It's a challenging scenario at the moment. Everyone is working under difficult circumstances. And trust is a critical component for agile teams, right? Working collaboratively, jointly and together as a team requires trust. The trust that each team member is actually empathetic with their customers, with the team members, with each other. I'm going to pause it here and obviously, yeah, open it for any questions from you, Tino, or from the wider group.
Thank you so much, Americo, for really enthusiastic and emotional for lecture what you give us here, and we can feel that you are burned for Appian and burned for this product. It's just really nice to see it, because it's not easy to bring up so many so much informations. It's more a dry system for me normally, but this was really powerful at the moment. Thank you for that, Americo. Now we have at the moment
Thank you so much.
Questions from the chat. No, I don't have, but I have a question perhaps, if you allow me that.
Yeah.
How is currently the situation by your customers? Is there a bigger need from Appians and the products from Appian as 1 year before? Do you think so? It's a change process there. Is there a more open system for products like you have?
Yeah, well, the short answer is yes, and I wouldn't necessarily only restrict it to Appian. I think there has been a big shift towards digital in general, towards trying to improve the collaboration. Specific, many organizations have realized that in the past they've been working in a way that it was unstructured, completely unstructured, relying on like old-fashioned type of collaboration, specifically emails, sharing documents. This obviously has created a lot of issues, because they're in many cases not compliant with specific auditing process. They're not secure enough. So Appian on one side supports organizations obviously in standardizing those processes or orchestrating those processes, making sure that there is consistency across the way of working, and ultimately puts people, processes, and data together in the same box, right? It's basically a way to deliver consistently information to the right stakeholders and allow them to act on those specific data according to specific processes. So Appian definitely has seen an increased demand, but also what is surprising is that many organizations are actually switching towards more of a digital transformation journey. They have been already on this journey in the past. Obviously, it's nothing new, but I think that the pandemic has put an emphasis on accelerating those, because they've seen really the need of changing the way they're doing. Some organizations, especially the old ones or the traditional ones, have been a bit reluctant in the past, but I think the COVID has really triggered something in their mind, and there's been a switch. And I think it's, from my perspective, is obviously the right space, the right market, and yeah, potentially the right time to be in.
Okay, thanks. And there's a question from the chat. This now sounds all very positive. Are you suggesting that this online off-site virtual mode is a successful model to be continued? What about the human factor? Does your team really feel comfortable with this as well?
That is a great question. I think it's a success from our standpoint, specifically from a project delivery standpoint, because we have seen that our consultants are specifically focusing on their activities rather than being dragged into other meetings, for example, right? When you have a consultant from a technology vendor that is sitting together with the customer, they might be like dragged into different type of meetings. They might lose focus on what they're doing. So having this type of like structured approach has helped us to be more productive. But on the other hand, there is obviously the human component, and we are over communicating with our consultants. I personally have 1 hour slot every week to talk with my direct reports. Over communicating in this scenario is becoming extremely relevant. And to the initial answer, are we going to go, or are we going to stay in this type of scenario? It's really difficult to say now. I think that there are some key benefits of being together jointly, sitting in the same room with the customer. We will probably be going into an hybrid mode where we will, for example, do specific activities like the Sprint Zero, which is a very important activity on site, and then going like with remote when we are configuring things on our platform. But then specifically when running sprint demos or outcomes of a specific activity, it would be better to do it on site in order to collect the customer feedback and really sense, get a sentiment of the room rather than doing it remotely. I'm very in favor of the hybrid approach, because I also believe that our consultant will actually benefit from working together as a team, together with the customers, right? The type of like human contact and human interaction is something that at the moment is missing, and I acknowledge that it's a challenge. It's a challenge to keep the motivation high, and we're doing we're going the extra mile and doing a lot of effort to keep that motivation high. But obviously, it's something that is on our radar, on top of our priority list. It's extremely important.
Thank you so much, Americo, for this great answer.